लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। ॐ सिन्दूरारुणविग्रहां त्रिनयनां माणिक्यमौलिस्फुरत्तारानायकशेखरां स्मितमुखीमापीनवक्षोरुहां पाणिभ्यां मलिपूर्णरत्नचषकं रक्तोत्पलं बिभ्रतीं सौम्यां रत्नघटस्थरक्तचरणां ध्यायेत् परामम्बिकाम्। ध्यायेन्नित्यं महेशम् रजतगिरिनिभं चारुचन्द्रावतंसं रत्नाकल्पोज्ज्वलाङ्गं परशुमृगवराभीतिहस्तं प्रसन्नं पद्मासीनं समन्तात् स्तुतममरगणैः व्याघ्रकृत्तिं वसानं विश्वाद्यं विश्वबीजं निखिलभयहरं पञ्चवक्त्रं त्रिनेत्रम्। ॐ नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुर्गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्स सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्।
धृतराष्ट्र उवाच धर्मक्षेत्रे कुरुक्षेत्रे समवेतायुयुत्सवः मामकाः पाण्डवाश्चैव किम कुर्वत संजय। श्री भगवान उवाच क्लैब्यं मास्मगमः पार्थ नैतत्त्वय्युपपद्यते क्षुद्रं हृदय दौर्बल्यं त्यक्तोत्तिष्ठ परन्तप। अर्जुन उवाच मदनुग्रहाय परमं गुह्यमध्यात्मसंज्ञितं यत्त्वयोक्तं वचस्तेन मोहोऽयं विगतो मम। मन्यसे यदि तच्छक्यं मया द्रष्टुमिति प्रभो योगेश्वर ततो मे त्वं दर्शयात्मानमव्ययम्। श्री भगवान उवाच न तु मां शक्यसे द्रष्टुम् अनेनैव स्वचक्षुषा दिव्यं ददामि ते चक्षुः पश्य मे योगमैश्वरम्। संजय उवाच एवमुक्त्वा ततो राजन् महायोगेश्वरो हरिः दर्शयामास पार्थाय परमं रूपमैश्वरम्। दिवि सूर्यसहस्रस्य भवेद्युगपदुत्थिता यदि सदृशी सा स्याद् भासस्तस्य महात्मनः। ततः स विस्मयाविष्टो हृष्टरोमा धनञ्जयः प्रणम्य शिरसा देवं कृताञ्जलिर्भाषत। अर्जुन उवाच त्वमक्षरं परमं वेदितव्यं त्वमस्य विश्वस्य परं निधानम् त्वमव्ययः शाश्वतधर्मगोप्ता सनातनस्त्वं पुरुषो मतो मे। अनादिमध्यान्तमनन्तवीर्यम् अनन्तबाहुं शशिसूर्यनेत्रम् पश्यामि त्वां दीप्तहुताशवक्त्रं स्वतेजसा विश्वमिदं तपन्तम्। द्यावा पृथिव्योरिदमन्तरं हि व्याप्तं त्वयैकेन दिशश्च सर्वाः दृष्ट्वाद्भुतं रूपमुग्रं तवेदं लोकत्रयं प्रव्यथितं महात्मन्.
Thank you. Shalabh, very nice. So we are Panchadashodhyaya, correct? And
we did verse 5.
We finished 5, right?
Ji.
Oh, very good. So, quick summary of what is going on here. What is the continuity of this particular adhyaya? Purushottama Yoga. Right? Purushottama Yoga. So Purushottam is the supreme self, supreme spirit. So yoga of the supreme spirit. Because yoga is always only union with the supreme spirit. So after the Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga, so here Bhagavan is describing this Ashwatha tree, right? He's trying to give a visual representation of the situation of samsara, empirical life. And the visual representation is helpful because sometimes, even as teachers in day-to-day empirical world, we are told that some students learn visually and some students learn better by hearing. And you see, the capacity for abstraction is a sign of a subtler intellect. If I tell you n-dimensional space, and you can think right away mathematically n-dimensional space, you have a capacity for abstraction. Yes or no? You cannot see four-dimensional space-time, can you? You can only see projections, but you can visualize it in your mind's eye. So there is a capacity for abstraction, correct? Okay. Now suppose you cannot. Then what we are told as teachers is, try to show the students something they can see with their eyes, grasp with their hands, okay? Lower level of student, that's why it's coming later in the book. Because first, you can abstract, visualize. Second, you can listen and understand. Third, you need to come down and see. Okay, then after you want to taste it and smell it also, which is what virtual reality is all about. Right? You see, did Ramanujam need virtual reality to conceive of his theorems? No. As our machines go smarter, we are growing stupider. So we need more and more intelligent smartphone, artificial intelligence to make us think we are smarter. Okay. But the power of the human mind is very great. It is very inventive. Its capacity is infinite, right? And when that power of the human mind is combined with the intuitive knowledge, right? Such as you see in Ramanujam, right? His knowledge was not learned, it was intuitive. He would write down theorems and later come back and prove them. How do you see that? How do you see with that mind's eye the theorem itself before it's proved? This is great imagination, right? You need, and it's not just idle imagination. It's not the kind of imagination that is kind of, can have crazy fantasy also, right? I'm sitting on a blue tree eating a pink fruit here. Sure, that's one kind of imagination. This is an imagination that is intuitive into the mysteries of the universe. right? That means this imagination is tuned with the cosmic mind itself. It is attuned to that. All great scientists have this power. Einstein, Kekulé, Watson and Crick, Ramanujam, you name it, Gauss, Maxwell. These people, Gibbs, they intuitively see into the mysteries of the universe. They're given an opportunity to glimpse, but that opportunity doesn't come just like that. It comes through hard disciplinary training of the mind in this and previous lives. You think at 9, somebody is a child prodigy in mathematics. That doesn't happen just like that. That training was done in previous lives, right? So, but nevertheless, the Lord is merciful, right? And there are limits to our, although I say intelligent student, there are limits to our human intelligence. We need to have a humility that even the so-called slowest student in the class, even the one who doesn't seem to understand anything, the idiot, the dunce, we say, has the light of God shining through them. We don't know when that light may suddenly open up and flash. So we have to treat them with that intuitive respect. You know what I'm saying? There are many instances of completely idiotic people following great saints and becoming overnight the most brilliant composers of verses. Totakacharya. You know the story of Totakacharya, right? There are other stories. There was a couple who took a mute and dumb fellow who was always in ecstasy to Shankaracharya. They did not understand him. They were beating him and things like that. But Shankaracharya recognized this boy is in bliss. He gave him Brahma Gyan and he was all right. Right? So we cannot judge by external thing also. Really, what is because this intelligence that is shining is a divine intelligence in everyone. Right? So, although I say a lower order, it is in a relative sense. It is in the conditioned world of empirical world. But in truth, there is no difference. Right? That person also is a reflection of the Lord's grace only. So, what does Bhagavan has now given us in the first 6 verses? A very beautiful example of this Ashwatha tree. And you see, this is why the vision of the Lord or the experience of the Lord must give true humility, right? That samyak darshana, right? Yes, relatively in the mental plane, some appear smarter and some appear, but in truth, one cannot have that arrogance born of that. Right? So below now, this is a very peculiar tree, roots above, branches and flowers and fruits below. And the analogy is very powerful. It is exciting for anybody to read it. It is not just like a person who needs the visual aid. And Bhagavan says, it's an eternal fig tree whose roots are above and branches below. Its leaves are the Vedic Chandas. And he who knows it knows the Vedas. Then, both below and above spread its branches flourishing because of the gunas, constituents. Guna pravruddha. Sense objects are its shoots. Vishaya pravalaha. Adhascha mulaha. Below, in the world of action, extend its roots that link up actions. And then, the form is not known. It has no end. That is, Rupam is not known. It has no beginning and no foundation. So this is actually the description of Maya. Right? And the difficulty with Maya is how he says use the sword of knowledge. The challenge is how do you cut something that has no form? Right? If it's a real sword, you can And a real tree, you can cut it. That's quite obvious how you should cut it. So here, this is where the aspirant has to exercise great subtlety, right? So, and that is the challenge. Tataha padam tat parimargitavyam. That status has to be laboriously sought, from which there is no return. Na nivartanti bhuya. It should be sought feeling, I take refuge in the Purushaha, from whence has emanated this ancient process. Purani. Devoid of egoism, nirmana moha, jitasanga dosha, and delusion, overcoming the flaws of attachment, firm in spirituality, free from lusts, released from dualities called pleasures, sukha dukkha sange. Gachanti amudha, undeluded sages, padam avyayam. And there, what is this state? What is this place? That very status. Tad eva padam punaha vishishyate. Na tad bhasayate suryo. The sun does not illuminate, but in fact, it is illumining the sun. Na shashanko na pavakaha. Shashanka is a moon, because shashakasya ankaha. It has the sign of the hair on it. If you see the moon when it is full, it seems like there is a rabbit in it. So, shashakasya anka, shashanka. Na pavakaha, nor does the fire. Yad gatva nivartante. Tad dhama paramam mama. That is my abode supreme, after which one, reaching which none falls back. So, although the sun is potent to illumine things, it does not illuminate. Similarly, also moon and fire. That all-pervasive status, padam, after reaching which none falls back and which the sun and the rest cannot illuminate, is my supreme abode, the abode of Vishnu. And in Mahabharata, here is quoted, Nanu sarva hi gati agatyanta samyogaha viprayoganta. Now all movement entails an eventual return. Unions end in severance. Samyogaha viprayoganta. Stri Parva, Moksha Parva, etc. Iti Prasiddham. Why then is it affirmed that those who repair to their abode do not return? Listen to this reason. So now verse number 7, please.
Mamaivanso jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha manasasthanindriyani prakritisthani karsati.
Yes, very beautiful. So you see, already in the previous chapters has been set up the concept that this Purusha, because of attachment to the gunas of Prakriti, enjoys, seemingly, experiences the dualities and gets bound. Right? So that means that is the reason why it is said that in every being, the Lord is present in each of you. Correct? That itself is a very powerful concept to think about. So close, right? And from that follow several corollaries, right? That therefore this Lord inside should be honored, respected, sanctified, kept in a pure place, etc. Then the Lord enjoys being in one, right? So, mama eva amshaha and sanatana. So that Purusha, you see, is eternal. In the Purusha Suktam, we read that this Purusha was born before even the Devas. It says, Jatam Agrataha. Of course, there even born should not be understood as this is a birthless, right? Anadi. So this eternal, Sanatana, part of myself. Mama eva amsha. Amsha is part, verily a part of myself, my eternal self. Jiva loke has become the Jiva in this world of living beings. Jiva Bhuta. Jiva Loka, Jiva Bhuta. Living, the world of living beings is Jiva Loka. In that, Jiva Bhuta has become what we call the Jiva. Right? It is the Jiva that is supposed to transmigrate. So the very formation of that individual Jiva, separated, the notion of separateness, is the root ignorance. When that root ignorance gets established, this Jiva thinks it transmigrates. Right? When the root ignorance gets destroyed, the Jiva is said to restore itself to the Brahmapadam, the point of which, from which there is no return. Right? Does that make sense? As long as the root ignorance is there, the Jiva thinks it is transmigrating. So, but that eternal part of myself has become this Jiva. It pulls the senses together. Indriyani, correct? Indriyani are the senses. Mana Shashtani, the sixth being the mind. 5 senses, sixth one is the mind. Prakriti Sthani, that are established, set in Prakriti. Karshati, it attracts. Right? Akarshan, you know, even in Hindi, I think, right? Akarshan is used for attraction. Karshati comes from this. So that's fantastic, right? So this power, eternal power of the Lord, right? In Aitariya Upanishad, it says, enters through the Brahmarandra into the child, right? At the time of the Simantonayanam, right? And having entered as a Jiva in this world of living beings, it attracts the senses and the mind to itself, right? And then experiences a set of experiences in this life, right? Those experiences are determined by the vasanas of the mind, the subtle samskaras, which are carried over. At the end of that life experience, the mind along with the senses withdraw, and the pranas, they withdraw. What happens at the time of death? The pranas leave the body, right? This body of 9 gates, Navadvara, I have a house. In my house, there are 9 gates, 14 floors. Where do I want to live? That's the question. Shall I go live in the lowest basement? Or shall I live in the middle floor? Or shall I live in the highest? Right? It's my choice. Correct? God has given us this choice. Yeah. So, after the one house, so, you know, we all take a house. Nowadays, nobody buys a house outright. You buy it on mortgage. Actually, God had the original idea of mortgage. He said, your house is not permanently willed or leased to you. It's a mortgage. Okay. So you pay off the mortgage, right? Now, in the day-to-day world, when you pay off the mortgage, you own the house. But in there, God is very kind. He says, this is now old house. You paid 30 years mortgage, the house is old now. I'll give you a new one. Why do you want to keep on with the old one? God is even more generous than mortgage lenders. See, he gives a new house, right? Don't you agree? That's not a bad deal, actually. Compared to here, all you pay the money, you get only the old house, right? And now the choice of the new house depends on how well you kept this house, right? So if you kept this house in great order, then your new house will have the upper floors are all accessible. You can have a lot of jolly times in Svargaloka, etc. Right? And then, depending on the relative experiences, dharmic and adharmic, punya, punya, the mind develops certain samskaras and then takes on a new. And these houses get better as you improve from previous births. Then the houses are born in yogis, in the families of yogis, in the families of good traditions, where Brahma Vidya is well known, right? As many of you have been blessed with. So you've got a great house this time around, right? All the fruits of previous mortgages paid. Now, the question is, this has all brought you to reading the Bhagavad Gita. And in that, of all the most delightful 15 chapter, right? So now, in some sense, a culmination of our life is happening, which is now we are being told, okay, this is what it's all about. You know, there was a very popular movie about 20 years ago called The Matrix. Do you remember this movie? It was a very mind-blowing movie with like a red pill and a blue pill and something. And, you know, it basically points out how we are all pretty confused and living lives which are pretty drugged and, you know, enslaved in some sense, right? I forget the details of the movie, but it was a pretty cool movie. And Bhagavad Gita is saying the same thing. It's basically a story of the Matrix in a nice Sanskrit verse, right? So now what Bhagavan is saying is, this is what's happened to you, right? A part of me came into you as a little baby, and now it's drawn together the mind and the senses, and it's playing out all the stuff that you had to play out from before, right? But I'm giving you a chance, he says. He says that, listen, this is another opportunity to come back to me and to enjoy my eternal bliss, right? That is the, I don't know which color pill that is. But you get it, right? Yeah.
Red, I think.
Red pill, huh? Okay, cool. I should remember that. I always forget the.
I forgot that, Shiva, if you remember. That's good.
Okay, any discussion on this?
So yeah, just the discussion like what you discussed, analogy very helpful, mortgage, and talking about different level of reality, right? I mean, when we look at different sci-fi, right? Sci-fi, novels or movies, people, this relative world also in the modern science, they also try to think about like, okay, what if there is another reality, right? Different dimension, different reality. And then this discussion comes, with colleagues at
Yes.
work also sometimes they, and then, I mean, things go to the point where there is no proof, right? Then, yeah, I mean, there is no point in mentioning this is all, I try to follow, and then I'm doing it. But, overall, in the end, if we just keep talking science and science, in the end, it ends, right? Because it's not going to take anywhere. And the conversation stops there.
Right. There are limits. You're right. You're right. Indeed. And that question of, what is reality? Right? So the first very important distinction is, are you going to answer this question by looking outward or inward?
Inward.
Yeah. So this is the first question. But if you meet somebody who is going to look for it outward, then you cannot, as you said, reach any agreed upon conclusion. Right? When you are convinced somehow intuitively, not in your mind, but in your heart, that this must be inward path, right? That is when you're truly drawn towards something, right? I'm not trying to say that logic is unimportant. Logic is very important in its place in a certain world. But what draws the seeker is not logic, right? Because logic is not a balm. It's not a salve for the traumas of the heart or the trials of the heart. It is not, that's not its realm, right? When the heart seeks peace, it seeks that deep intuitive knowledge, then it knows it must turn inward. Right? But this is very hard for many people because the mind is very difficult to control. Already you saw in chapter 6, I think, right? Arjuna says, Pramati Balavadridham, that verse, right? Chanchala Manakrishna. This mind is very chanchal, right? Pramati, it's stubborn. Balavadridham, right? I think that he says, I think that trying to control this mind, Vayoriva Dushkaram, it's as hard as trying to control the wind, to catch the wind. Then Sri Krishna says, Asamshayam Mahabaho Mano Durnigraha. It's very difficult. Indeed, you're right. Asamshaya, without a doubt. Mahabaho, oh mighty armed one. Right? Mano Durnigraha Chalam. That is, this Manas Chalam is very difficult to control. Right? But then he says, he gives a way out. Abhyasena tu kaunteya, vairagyena cha grhyate. Through abhyas and vairagya. Same thing in Yoga Sutra is abhyasa vairagya abhyam tam nirodha, tan nirodha. Right? Same point. So when the heart has been convinced that the reality can only be apprehended by the inward path, and then if one has faith in the words of the Lord and the Yoga Sutra, Maharishi Patanjali, etc., then abhyasa vairagya, this one begins to start this path of abhyasa and vairagya. Right? So that is the point. But if one is not convinced of that, then there is no point, right? You cannot kind of try to keep telling somebody about this. Right? It has to come from within. That's always been our great sages' way. They train those who are interested and who are willing and who are genuinely, deeply, sincerely committed. Right? Then the path is successful. Right? Next one, please. Where are we? Yes. How does the jiva? I will just read the preceding verse, preceding commentary. How does the jiva, the living being, postulated as my part, transmigrate, leaving the body? Jiva pulls the sense organs, namely ear and so forth, with the mind as the sixth, all firm set in Prakriti with their proper abodes being the oracle, etc. Karna Shushkal Yadav. Karna Shashkul Yadav. At what time? And now please 8.
Sariram yad bapnoti yatsapyukramati swaraha grihatvaitani sanyani bayurgandhani vasayat.
Shariram yad avapnoti. This is what I was saying at the time of the Simantonayanam. After the Garbhadanam, when the jiva avapnoti, takes on, yacha api utkramati ishvara. And when he moves out of it, grihitva etani sanyati, taking these, he goes with him, vayur gandhani vashaya. Just as air moves scents from their abodes. That's a nice analogy, right? So if we light an agarbatti, through diffusion and convective mechanisms, the smell spreads. Right? In the same way, this jiva takes with the pranas. Through the pranas, the 5 pranas move with the mind. Where the mind goes, the pranas go. And so the mind at some point decides that this body, it's time, mortgage is paid, time's up, time for doing the closing, and then take on the new one. Right? This thing is automatic. The Lord has decreed the closing date and the move-in date of the new body, etc. Right? Other than in very great yogis, that choice is not given to many. Bhishma had that choice through yogic power, right? he could keep the apana vayu constrained into the body until the time of Uttarayana, when he could release it and then move upwards. Right? So, nevertheless, the procedure has been explained. It's also explained very nicely in the Chandogya Upanishad, by the way. So, when the potent jiva, the master of the psychophysical organism, moves out of it, he takes these sense organs. The second line of the previous verse must be syntactically connected as the first term of verse 8. From the previous body, when the jiva reaches out to a fresh one, taking the sense organs of the mind as the sixth, he moves forth. Like what? Like air taking scents from their abodes, flowers, etc. Which sense organs are referred to? Number 9, please.
Sotram Chakshuhu Sparsanam Sarasanam Granameva cha Adhisthaya Manasrayam Visayanu Pasebate.
Right. Shrotram, ear. Chakshuhu, eye. Sparshanam, skin. Rasanam, tongue. Granam, nose. Evacha, adhisthaya, with those as the abodes, or manascha ayam, and the mind being the sixth. Dwelling in the body, the jiva experiences objects. Vishayan shabdadin upasevate. Evam dehagatam deha. The dweller in the body while leaving it. Now 9, please.
उत्क्रामन्तं स्थितं वापि भुञ्जानं वा गुणान्वितं विमूढानानुपश्यन्ति पश्यन्ति ज्ञानचक्षुषः.
Yeah, very nice. The deluded do not perceive him going out or staying or experiencing through association with the gunas. Only those who have wisdom's eye perceive him. Utkramantam, when leaving. Sthitam, staying. Va api, either leaving or staying. Bhunjanam, bhunjati, experiencing. In any of these three states, leaving, staying, experiencing, va gunanvitam vimudha, on account of their association with the gunas. The gunanvitam should be construed with the previous one, I believe, with those three. It is the jiva being in contact with the gunas, whose senses are pleasure, pain, and delusion. It experiences these objects, and it can be perceived. But vimudhaha, the deluded ones, na anupashyanti, do not see it. Pashyanti jnana chakshusha, the ones who have the eye of wisdom, jnana chakshu, they see it, they perceive it. The Lord expresses pity for their sad plight. In contrast, those who have the eye of valid knowledge, yielded by the right means of knowledge, are clear-eyed and do see the jiva. But some. Number 11, please.
यतन्तो योगिनश्चैनं पश्यन्त्यात्मन्यवस्थितं यतन्तोऽप्यकृतात्मानो नैनं पश्यन्त्यचेतसः.
Yatantaha, those who persevere, those who exert effort. Yoginaha, those yogis. Cha, and those who persevere endued with yoga, yoginaha. Cha enam, and this one, enam, pashyanti, they see this one. Atmani avasthitam, atmani, in the locative case, in their self, situated, dwelling in the inner self. Yatantaha yoginaha cha enam pashyanti atmani avasthitam. Yatanto api, although persevere, api akritatmano, of unpurified mind, na enam, do not this one, pashyanti achetasa, they fail to see, not having mastered the inner self, those of unpurified minds. Yatantaha prayatnam kurvanta yoginaha cha samahita chittaha enam prakritam Atmanam Pashyanti. I am Aham Asmi. This is a very actually one of the Mahavakyas. Aham Brahma Asmi. Iti upalabhyate upalabhante Atmani swasyam buddhau avasthitam yatanto api shastradi pramanaihi akritatmanah. Right? Yatanto api akritatmanah asamskritatmanah asamskritatmanah. Ones who have not purified their minds. Tapasa indriya jayena cha, through tapas, penance, austerities, through mastery of the senses. Duscharitat anuparataha, not having abstained from wicked ways of life. Ashanta darpaha, not having abolished vanity. Prayatnam kurvanto api na yenam pashyanti achetasaha avivekinaha. Those who are not discriminating, undiscriminating, and mindless are not able to see, even though exerting effort and perseverance. That status which, while illuminating all, itself needs no illumination by the light of fire, sun, etc., after attaining which seekers, after liberation, no more return to transmigratory life. In accordance with whose varying adjuncts living beings are fashioned as its parts, just as the pot ether, ghata kashadaya, according to the adjuncts of the ether enclosed, iva akashasya, that status is set forth in 4 verses as the self of all things and the ground of all empirical activities. Also, these verses summarize the powers of the status in question, the Blessed Lord said. So, any questions? Till 11, then we can continue to 12.
So when you referred on in earlier verses, the mind, just a quick, the mind, the prana follows where the mind goes, right? So the mind, you mean the buddhi part, right? Buddhi. So manas, chitta, ahankar, buddhi. So
no, the bit about prana
yes,
is actually manas. It is manas. Manas and prana are tied.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Importer and exporter of sensations, manas, follows the pranas, because it's the pranas going through the senses that it gives us sense experience.
Right.
So of the two, the manas and the pranas, manas is the more fundamental, is it?
It is more powerful. In the sense that, and the pranas. Here you're referring to the 5 pranas as differentiated, right? Manas is more powerful than the indriyas, than the senses. Okay. Pranas can be referred to either in plural or when they are not differentiated. That is just referred to as singular prana. The source of the pran, that singular pran and the manas are the same. They come from the same point. Right? That pran is more easy to control by breath control. So for those whose mind is not able to be controlled by concentration, breath control can be an indirect means to control the mind. Right? That's the whole idea of pranayama. That's why we say first yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, then pratyahara. Because through pranayam, when the nadis are purified, mind has gained some level of, through yoking it by the breath and the pranic energy, the mind is now a little bit more under control. Still not perfectly. But through that mechanism, then it can be made to come and control the senses and yoke the senses, pratyahara. Then it can withdraw from the objects of the senses. Right? Then the antaranga, the three antaranga parts of the yogic practice can be started. Because yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyaha are still bahiranga. Antaranga, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. Three inside, inner. So this is a preparation. Then once the withdrawal is accomplished, then dharana, focus, concentration can really start. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that will make a lot of sense now. Yeah, I
Certainly.
mixed up. So thank you.
Any other questions? Or shall we move on to who is reading 12?
Fine.
Archit. So any questions before we move on to 12 from 11?
Roshankar, I have one question. So, once you give this analogy that the light of the real self may shine even if there was this analogy of all these marbles lying on the base of an aquarium, and even if one is transparent, a little bit transparent, and by chance the light shines through, then that alone can be the guide.
Right.
So without the purification, when the purification is not complete, as said in this verse, can that happen even then? Or
right. Yeah, I think I get the drift of your question. So Swami Gyaneshwara Bharati says this very nicely. So the aspirant is always having the question, should I purify and then practice, or practice and purify?
yeah.
Right. And the answer is both, in the sense that you need two legs to walk. If you go on only one leg, you'll be hopping all the time, which doesn't lead to a good progress, right? Right. So abhyas tatra sthito yatna abhyasa. To rest in that truth is abhyas, right? That is practice, right? That is a regular effort to bring the mind to rest. Yogas chitta vritti nirodha, right? Tada drashtu swarupe avasthanam. And tatra sthito, to rest in that point is abhyas. That must be practiced, correct? Now, if the mind is impure, the practice in that particular day may not yield fruition. But the practice will purify the mind. Right? Then the mind enters the world of empirical activities after the practice. Right? Actually, that is also practice of a different kind. Right? You know, we always say, we think sadhana is the special place and time, 20 minutes in the morning also. But sadhana, there is internal sadhana and external sadhana also. Right? Ultimately, in the beginning, the internal sadhana is needed because, as Sri Ramakrishna says, if you have a sapling and you want it to grow, you must enclose it with a fence and water it. And then it becomes strong. This is your practice. Then once the practice becomes like a tree, then even if you tie a mad elephant to it, it cannot shake it. And the world is like the mad elephant, right? You're sitting at your desk, one phone is ringing, your cell phone is ringing, somebody is sending IM, and there's a music playing, and then the alarm goes off. This is the mad elephant, right? Where is your mind at that point, right? Then suddenly your wife calls, we have to pick up the kid, and somebody says the water main burst in your car has a flat, you can't go home, there's a snowstorm coming, and the water main has burst in your basement. Now this is the test, right? Or more recently, you're going out with your elder parent, suddenly that person falls, right? And you have to rush to the emergency room, and you sit there. What is your mind doing at that point, right? This is external sadhana, right? If you're able to keep your composure and take the right decisions, no problem, right? And then you sit in internal sadhana, there's no problem also. So that day's events don't bother you. Maya mayam idam akhilam hitva brahmapadam tvam pravishavitva. It's all a game, right? One massive joke. Right? But it has to be played with full involvement and a good sense of humor, right? Etc. So, insofar as, yes, purification. So every time we go out in the mind, it gets yanked away. You come back in the evening. Let's say, okay, suppose the mind got yanked away. Okay, you got upset with somebody on the phone, right? Then this is an example of the mind getting yanked away. You call this guy and said, listen, I'm really sick of you. You're a telemarketer, robocall. You give him a piece of your mind and you turn the phone off. It's fine. You lost your mind that little bit that day. It got to you. You come back and you sit in meditation. I think, yeah, maybe it wasn't necessary, right? But at the same time, maybe the idiot needed, somebody has to tell the idiot also. Because remember, Bhagavan said that the snake has to hiss too, right? So slowly what happens as the mind becomes purified is you actually exercise the right guna at the right time. There is a time to exercise rajas in the world. Arjuna cannot be forever sitting on his chariot and meditating if he has to defeat the Kaurava forces. Yes or no? He has to jump on that chariot, pull the bow and discharge the arrows like a blazing hail to intimidate and defeat the enemy, right? But he does it with perfect awareness. That's why he's such a great warrior. Undefeatable. Whatever is thrown at him, he has the shield and the sword ready, right? Same thing is there in the Greek myths. Perseus, great hero, right? He went and fought the Medusa, beheaded the Medusa, put it head in a cap, in a bag and brought it home, right? How did he do that? And then won his wife Andromeda on the way. See, these are inspiring stories. Hercules, right? He had to perform 7 great feats. Right? These are all Veeras, right? Veera Swabhav, right? Same thing. Different ways of conveying how we should live very successfully, very powerfully in life, very inspiringly, correct? So it's not wrong to exercise rajas, right? In the morning you get up and do exercise. Obviously you are overcoming tamas with rajas. You're doing it consciously. Then you sit in meditation, you overcome the rajas with sattva, right? And you apply the mind to it. Then the Lord tells you, this is how you should behave, right? Don't be afraid. Take on the big challenges, right? Don't be afraid. Have your thing. I am sitting right in your chariot, right? I will teach you how to ride this. This is the message, right? So insofar as purification and practice and go out and do what has to be done. And with that complete faith, there'll be no problem. Right?
Yeah.
Next one, 12 now. We will finish 12 today.
यदादित्यगतं तेजो जगद्भासयतेऽखिलं यच्चन्द्रमसि यच्चाग्नौ तत्तेजो विद्धि मामकम्.
This is what I said. First when he said there the sun, I said he is the one who illumines the sun itself. What is this? Light of consciousness. Without the light of consciousness, there is no other luminous object. Right? Jyotishamapi tajyoti. It's also there in one of the verses, right? So, Yad Adityagatam Tejaha, that luminous energy of the sun, Jagat Bhasayate Akhilam, that illuminates the entire world. Yat Chandramasi, and the one that is in the moon, Yatcha Agnav, and in fire, Tat Tejaha, that radiance, Vidhi Mamakam, know that to be mine. Right? And that same radiance is inside. It is that radiance inside that allows the senses to perceive these lights. So it must be known. So the luminous energy, the splendor, the light of the sun which illumines the whole world, the same as that which exists in the moon and the fire, know that to be mine. Huam Vishnu, or the luminous conscious light in the sun also, as also in the moon and fire, know that to be mine. There is also a subtle meaning here that you see, the moon is the mind. And the sun is the cosmic prana. So in Purusha Suktam, there is a verse that comes, Chandra Manaso Jata. See, from Purusha's mind was born the moon itself. Chaksho Surya, from the eye, Ajayata. Right? From the eyes of Purusha were born, the pranic force was born the sun. Therefore, these two lights are very important to refer to. Right? Now, those two lights, and then Agni. Why these three? So Agni, you see, is in the Manipuraka Chakra. Right? In the Jiva, it is also the resident place of vision and sight. Okay. So we take all these objects. We take food. Food is physical food, mental food. Right? Physical food you eat, you digest with this thing called Jatra Agni. Right? Now this, what does it do? Depending on the quality of the food and the quality of your Agni, it pachati, cooks it. Then it discards the useless part. Right? Apana. Malatyaga. The good part, it converts to energy. This energy, it then spreads throughout the body. Right? And a part of this energy rises up in us. Right? This distilled, beautiful part of energy, Ojas, Tejas, Prana, right? Urdhvareta, moving upward. So you pour into this fire, the fire burns and sends the best part upward, right? In the yajna. Correct? This part of the fire is called Jata Veda, the one who knew the Vedas. Right? The other part of fire which goes downward is not worshipped. It is rejected as Kravyadamani, so as to not descend into the basement. Right? So fire is very important. It's all our sense organs are also giving us inputs. We are seeing so many things. Right? And some of them are attractive, some of them are dangerous, some of them are useful, some of them are productive. So the mind, as it is able to discriminate and put into that fire the samid, the correct, sacrificial sticks, fire sticks, then it generates the right, and the homam is done properly. The havan is done properly. It's happening every day in our lives. Every day we are doing a yajna. Okay? And so knowing this, sun, moon, and the Agni. So that light is Bhagavan's light. Right? So once one knows this Jnana Chakshuhu, then you don't see those things as different and you know what they mean. How from the Purusha Suktam is said, these things. Right? So therefore, through Abhyas and Vairagya and that twofold practice of sadhana, mind purified, these things become very quite, as you said, if one marble is polished and the chink of light comes in, then the mind attains great peace and bliss. Acha, so then we will stop with 12 today. And there are more beautiful verses. I think next 4 verses are very beautiful and actually form a track, but I thought it would be nice to get to 12 because it's a very beautiful verse and we can end on a high note. Okay. Any other questions, comments on today's Purushottama Yoga? Very good. In that case, let's say Shanti Mantram. All have a lovely evening, enjoyable weekend. See you next week. Om Tacham Yora Vrinimahe Gatum Yajnaya Gatum Yajnapataye Daivi Swastirastunaham Swastirmanushabhyah Urdhvam Jigatu Bheshajam Shanno Astu Dvipadehe Sham Chatushpade Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste everyone. Have a lovely evening. See you.